Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Stronger. We are very happy today to have some wonderful guests from our industry, and these are two of the more important experts, I would say, right now, given the reopening process and the changes that are happening across the different markets in our country and throughout the world. So we have today with us we have Dirk Johnson, and he is the executive director of the VRHP and has been doing that for 5 years beyond as the executive director, has also been on the board there for 10 years. And he is a specialist in housekeeping and maintenance and laundry. And that's something that the VRHP is specializing in as an association. And he's done a great job communicating to our industry right now as we open things up and have more and more people coming to stay with the COVID situation. It's great to have him here, and we'll touch more on that soon. So thanks for joining us.
Great, Brett. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And then we have Sir Doug Kennedy here, and he has been in our industry since 1996, presenting at our shows in the VRMA and a variety of different areas. He has been specializing in reservation sales, hospitality service, and homeowner relations. And these are some really important things for us right now as we hopefully open more and more markets up. He's written training articles for VRM Intel and VRMA Arrivals, ongoing articles for those two magazines. And then he's well known throughout the broader lodging industry. He has conducted over 2,000 small group training sessions and about 48,000 participants over the years. And he has done workshops in 47 of 50 different states and many countries out there throughout the world. And we're very happy to have him. Another thing that's changing as we continue to have more and more people when it comes to the experience of reservations and managing guests and managing owners. So thank you, Doug, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
And we'll get into the nitty gritty here in a second. We've also got our producer here, and Mike, and he's in we'll call it a real studio in the background there, and he'll be making sure we're technically up to speed. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. This will be recorded and pushed out to it'll be pushed out to the public as well. So you can watch it now, you can watch it later if you do have to jump off for any reason. So the two primary things we want to talk about today is helping provide some information to our clients, to other property managers in the industry when it comes to the world of housekeeping, maintenance, laundry in relation to COVID, and also the experience behind reservations and bookings and what's changing, how do we adapt to it. So let's go ahead and get started by talking to Dirk. We know that you and the VRMA have partnered recently or merged between the VRHP and VRMA, and this has been something that I think two worlds have come together to produce a document on vrma.org/safe home that provides a lot of recommendations to you or to the industry when it comes to how to best handle housekeeping and maintenance and laundry. So we do have on that site a variety of different topics to go through. But before we did that, did you want to chime in on giving any sort of preface or any sort of oversight before we dig into the nitty gritty?
No, the intent of the intent of the document is to provide a framework for companies to look at their specific business decisions and their business operating procedures and apply this document to their company. And that's the beauty of it is that it's specific in some areas, general in other, because we all operate in a different way. And the other thing is that as we gather more information about COVID and other knowledge comes that can be tested and verified, these documents and this document and guideline will be updated based on that information that we have. So, there's some stuff in there that may seem true today, but then 6 weeks down the road, we may decide that, hey, based on the information we have, we need to adjust it and make changes and adjustments.
Yeah, and we do want to mention with your consulting company, Housekeeping Solutions team, and the fact that you've dealt with mountain and ski destinations since for many years now, plus beach destinations. You've got an idea of some of the differences that happen across the board, and I'm sure that expertise has helped guide some of these recommendations.
Yeah,
So,
it has. It has.
if anybody does want to go to that site, it's vrma.org/safe home, and you can follow along. But the first thing we did want to talk about is really these are recommendations. Everyone's got different situations, local government mandates. If you're considering any sort of advice when it comes to a legal side, we'd always recommend consulting with a lawyer and your attorney and making sure that you're protecting yourself that way. But I do think that being safe now is better than being sorry. So so Dirk, I wanted to jump on the guidelines here and first talk about the differences between disinfection and sanitation. If you can talk about those two elements as the kickoff point.
Yeah, absolutely, because that really serves as a foundational piece for everything that we do. To the simple definition of sanitization means I take a product, I put it on a surface, and it reduces the microbes or viruses that are on that surface, thus reducing the likelihood or chance that an individual can get sick. Whereas a disinfectant is been tested as a specific virus or bacteria to kill that particular item, and it requires dwell time. And so that means the product has to sit on the surface for that specific dwell time to kill those specific items that it's been tested against and that the label says that it can. And so it's also important to know that we can disinfect hard surfaces, hardwood floors, tile, countertops, porcelain, stainless steel, because I can have the product sit on the surface. And then your soft goods, couches, carpets, throw pillows, things of that nature, I can only sanitize. And so, that's why that definition is so important as we start to look at getting our homes ready, getting our properties ready for occupancy, and then knowing and understanding the products that I have and the cleaner is using. Is this a disinfectant or is this a sanitizing agent as I start to go through and have them clean?
Excellent. Thank you for that. Doug, let's pivot over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Kennedy Training Network?
Well, you did a pretty good job on the intro, so thanks for the overview. But our core business is to provide mostly traditional on-site training. So you see pictures of me on LinkedIn and various places traveling around the world doing training classes. We also do private live webcam trainings, which we've done for many years. And that's a skill that's really serving us well in this situation because, of course, it's not a good time to get on a plane, and I don't think anybody wants to have on-person training events just now. So we're doing everything private, live, small team events. And then we do a lot of telephone mystery shopping, a lot in the vacation rental throughout the hotel industry, mostly for resorts. Branded hotels, their calls generally go to call centers, but there's a lot of phone bookings out there. And then we also do we do third-party call scoring. So for companies that have their own call recording system as part of their CRM, we score calls. And so that's our core business. We really enjoy helping people increase their conversion, get more bookings, and I think it's going to be a really challenging time for doing that. We also do hospitality training for the guests once they get there. But right now, the challenge is going to be, the phones are going to start ringing soon, and they may be starting ringing really a little bit more this week from what I'm hearing from clients, depending on which geographic location. So we have to prepare our team now during what I'm calling the quiet phase, because I do think there's pent-up demand, particularly in vacation rentals. Should have a good midsummer through fall upside to this. We want to be ready for the daydreaming deal seekers, as I call them. They're daydreaming about getting out of the house, and they're going to be seeking a deal.
It's interesting, Doug, you bring that up. Last week I was in Gulf Shores, Alabama, when they opened the beaches down there doing some training and recording for my purposes, personal purposes. And as I was talking to the reservations manager, she said, you know, come Thursday, Wednesday, phones were ringing off the hook of people coming down, what the beach is like, what restaurants are open. I'm ready to come stay, tired of my four walls and ready to get out. So absolutely correct.
That's the daydreamers. Did she tell you they're also seeking deals?
Well, the rates were pretty low to begin with, so I think they were anxious just to get some occupancy and make it run and get some cash in the coffer. So,
but no matter what rate they lead with, they're going to be wanting the deal. But it's a great pairing. I like being called a rock star on the LinkedIn post, Dirk. What do you think?
Absolutely. That's a new call for me. Thanks, Brett. Doug and Dirk coming to a stadium near you for our newest rock concert as we start to go through this. That would be pretty
just got to get the long hair wigs, maybe.
You just
I'll have to get my wig for that. Excuse me for just a moment while I go dig it out of the closet. Just a second. Find my Halloween stuff.
Yeah, that was a lot of that. Mike actually coined you as rock star, so I can't take credit for that.
That's all right.
I'll take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I did want to mention, just because so many things are going to be changing as far as the way we communicate to our guests. And Doug and I, we've talked a lot recently because we're releasing this new call scoring type of feature and within our new product. And we think that this is a really valuable piece, but a lot of the standard practices when it comes to creating urgency and the typical strategies the reservationists would do to close deals and drive more revenue. How is that changing right now as far as like, what do you recommend to reservationists that need to change their tone or need to approach things a little bit differently?
Good question.
Well, it's definitely a time when, and I'll kick this back to Dirk in a second, but it's great that you're adding that. As you know, I'm affiliated with another company that has me doing, endorsing their call recording tools. So I'm glad to see you add that. I think it's good for the industry. There's other companies too. Anyone who can have such an app, it's going to benefit from them to listen to calls, because then you're going to know what real people are asking, and then you're going to be prepared for those questions. So I think the two subsets of questions we're going to be getting are, really three. One, what is your deal? Two, what's open? What's really going on? Are the beaches open? Are there, is the attraction open? Are the trails open? Is the boat ramps open? Is the museum open? And then I do think you're going to be getting questions about, cleanliness, standards, how is housekeeping handled? And this is a really good time when the vacation rental industry needs to explain to the public, first starting with our Florida Governor DeSantis, who has shut down vacation rentals mid-April. However, hotels, including extended stay hotels, can stay open. Because I think that Governor DeSantis and other people think that a vacation rental is like a by owner, where somebody's cousin cleans it and it's not professional. So got a little off track there, but that's why it's great that VRMA is leading, and the other associations are leading to teach people what this industry is. And Dirk is like the Dr. Fauci of, sanitation and disinfectant.
So, Doug, thank you. I think your third question there is spot on. And I think it may be the first question that's asked in addition to rate, because having that trust and confidence of the guest coming in to stay, knowing that it's been disinfected and sanitized in an appropriate way, and to talk about the standards that you have. One of the things I've been talking about, and Doug, you're a great communicator and telling, and from the reservationist standpoint of how to articulate, what the property is. So now I have to do that from a cleaning standpoint. And I've told the executive housekeepers and so forth that they need to be sending out at a minimum a weekly email to everybody in the company. This is what we did this week. This is what we learned this week. This is how we're doing this week. And video is a very powerful tool. Photographs are just as powerful to do that.
Yeah, and talking up that game of, oh, by the way, because a lot of the people that call have found it through a third-party platform. Some of them are opaque, so the people have to book through the platform, but they may send messages. They may message the vacation property management company through the apps, and so they may have questions there, or they may call. Now, they may not directly say, are your homes clean? But they're going to be saying, is it nice? How, they're going to be, you really have to be sensitive to the conversation and then be confident to say, Oh, and by the way, you know, we have excellent housekeeping staff. Our inspectors are meticulous. You know, they can make it conversational and fun. That's a really big deal that may go unspoken unless you start a conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the reservationists to not shy away from that content, which is why it's another reason that the executive housekeeper or the person in charge of that housekeeping actually come to the reservations department 2 or 3 times a week and talk about, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're proceeding. Here's the disinfectant we're using. This is how it works. Here's the sanitizing agent. This is how it works. This is what it smells like, you know,
Yeah.
and then bring a picture of Betty Sue and Freddie and say, these are our cleaners. You know, they're doing a great job. You know, they just received their VRHP housekeeper certification. You know, the inspectors are working on their certification from VRHP. You know, all of these things are playing into this, the confidence in the voice from the reservationist of, I am confident in my housekeeping team that they will deliver what I'm telling you. And they're not going to do that unless somebody's telling them and retelling and retelling and retelling.
I feel bad for Brett here because he's got 2, you know, conference speakers. We're going to dominate. Sorry, Brett. But just to add to that,
You're the guest.
just to add to that, you know, every survey that I've ever seen going back to, you know, hotels, and I know hotels have a lot more hotels than vacation rental, and until a few years, they also, the associations did more. But if you see any survey on hotels where they ask people to rank what is the most important characteristics in selecting a hotel, okay, it's generally a tie between safety and cleanliness, depending on how the survey is worded.
Correct.
So, and also depending on what's happened recently in the world. But generally cleanliness is number 1, but it's not something they generally ask about. And so it is something important to talk about. And back to your point, the more people can listen to real calls, Brett, through, you know, the wonderful many sponsors from VRMA who offer these services, it is really great because it's great that you have a tool, but if managers don't sit down and take the time to listen to that, that's why a lot of people like to have us do third-party call scoring, which we do for all kinds of, you know, different vacation and resort clients. And somebody's got to listen to the storefront window and hear how it's being presented, because Dirk can teach people to have, you know, the highest standards. But if you're saying, oh yeah, well, we have our housekeeping is really good, you know, that's not selling.
Well, it's always been fun to watch Doug's pictures, his famous pictures of throwing up his hands and getting all
lunch.
So I know you know people, that's for sure.
So, but before you go on from this topic, I want to say one other thing. And you know, Doug, how you're having people listen to the recorded calls. I think it's important that the cleaners, the cleaning professionals, the housekeepers, the inspectors, the supervisors, and the managers of the back of the house departments, whether it be housekeeping, maintenance, or laundry, they listen to some of those calls.
Yeah.
So they can actually hear the question from the guest and feel and hear that urgency in the guest voice of, is this a clean property? And then to hear the reservationist say with a firm, resilient voice and intonation, yes, it is, because the housekeeping manager was in here yesterday, showed us the product. I've seen it. I've been in the properties. I've done these things, and be able to articulate that with
our people are amazing. Our inspectors are in-house. We obsess on it. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it is a good nugget for people to take away, is to make sure their housekeeping teams and the reservation teams are really communicating more than ever. I think that's a pretty good way of looking at things, because it is a selling technique, right? And I was asked the other day on a different webinar, what are some marketing techniques during this time? I think that you touched on it, Doug. It's one of the biggest marketing techniques is, hey, it's safe to come here, right? If you're going to send a blast out that says, hey, it's safe to come here, and this is why, that's good proactive communication. That's, you know, essentially good marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, definitely.
So from PPE, talk to us from an equipment perspective and those sort of things. Dirk, what's the best practice? What's the recommendations when it comes to all the equipment?
So the personal protective equipment, which is what PPE stands for, I will always defer to Section 8 of the safety data sheet. And so any manager of the department, supervisor, even down to the cleaners, they need to know and be familiar with the safety data sheets. You know, some products only require a disposable glove to use. Some require a more stronger glove to use. Some talk about having splash goggles to use a product. And so we want to make sure that that's available to them. And then to the cleaners, you know, a new one may be having either the disposable mask or the homemade mask as they walk in to clean with, and then receiving the training on how to appropriately put on the mask and how to remove the mask and how to protect themselves in this COVID-19 environment is paramount. So that's my request, is that everybody understand your Section 8 of the safety data sheet. A lot of us have new disinfectants, new sanitizing agents coming in. Make sure that we're providing the proper personal protective equipment that is listed in Section 8.
What would you recommend to companies as far as communicating to their employees, their team, how to keep them safe? What would you recommend to people when it comes to just protecting their employees or making their employees feel comfortable when it comes to maintenance, housekeeping?
You know, that's a really good question, and that's going to depend on the individuals that you're working with. A lot of the back of the house professionals are going to be scared and fearful in some ways based on the news media and based on what they're, you know, because they're afraid they may go into a property and may bring it home. So now as an owner of a company, I need to make sure that I'm listening to those concerns and that I am articulating and presenting the patterns and methodology and the protocols to protect my staff. You know, I read an article at the beginning of COVID that there's an underlying assumption that just because I, as an owner or supervisor, have communicated to my staff that there's understanding. And that is so not true. I need to repeat, I need to meet with, I need to make sure that this information I'm providing is actually distilling into their mind for me to know that they are truly understanding these protocols that are taking place. You know, and those protocols can come from, you know, the personal protective equipment that's being provided. It could come from an earlier checkout time and a later check-in time. It could come from a policy of all guests turning on ceiling fans and central HVAC fans to have air movement to get any air particles down on the ground. It could come from any number of ways that those owners have felt the need to the staff feel safe as they start to go through this. And again, it's a one-on-one piece. It's a one-on-one piece, and you got to listen. Got to listen to what they're saying and what they're feeling, because the employees may not know what they're feeling inside because of everything that they've read. And so, you know, talk about the products you're using, talk about how they kill it, talk about all these things that go into that. That's where I would start. And then, you know, if I'm still closed and I'm getting ready to reopen, I would make sure that I would be communicating with them long before I brought them back about what I'm doing and what's taking place. And then when I brought them back in, I would do a mini onboarding again. I would sit down in small groups and I would talk about the personal protective equipment. I would talk about the cleaning procedures. I would talk about the adjustments that we've made on the guest side. You know, I would talk about the OSHA guidelines. I would talk about what the CDC is recommending and how that applies to an individual's home and how I translate that into a commercial environment and how that's going to apply to me. You know, those are all things that I would start to do. And then I would make sure that I meet with my staff at the beginning 2 or 3 times a week, if not daily, just to check in to make sure they're okay and to answer any questions that they may have or situations they may be coming across that they feel uncomfortable with.
Absolutely. Doug, this is related. When it comes to owner relations, and that's something you've been working on recently in the later stages, but as far as the owner communications, when it comes to them coming to stay at their property, when it comes to proactive communication to them as far as what you're doing as a company, what would you advise people to focus on?
Relative to the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah,
Or just
and potentially coming to the property, potentially, you know, letting them know that just from a COVID perspective, you've got things under control. This is what you're doing. What type of advice would you have to people?
Well, it's a great question. I'm going to back up and just answer it in general. One of the things that I've advocated for, I kind of got drug into doing training for the homeowner services or homeowner acquisition, depending on the company and the size of the rental company. There are sometimes one person or two different teams. But the real premise of the work I've done in that area is to reach out proactively in an organized way. I apply the old 80-20 rule. 20% of the owners suck out 80% of your time. And then out of those 20%, some of them really are in the wrong investment anyway. And they thought it would be easier, they make more money or whatever. And they're gonna exit the program anyway. But what we want to do is focus on the quiet ones that we don't hear from and put them in I recommend, like no more than 4-month rotation. So you reach out and touch them. This is more important than ever to do now. First of all, to let them know your company is doing everything it can to bring in rental revenue so they can pay their mortgage. We know owners don't really own these homes in most cases. The bank or the mortgage company does. So on a bigger picture, it's a regular correspondence. As far as for them actually using the homes, which I think is your question, it goes back to a lot of what Dirk is saying for communicating with the guests. If they have, I think in general, I would communicate with the owners what you're doing to protect the guests, and then they'll know. That should be one of your regular updates for your owners. That could be in a quarterly blast or a notification, but also hopefully if you're following my best practices, every homeowner services person is reaching out to every homeowner no more than every 4 months. And so if a homeowner sends a question in, hey, what's going on, blah, 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 answer the question and say, by the way, some updates on our housekeeping, and maybe even say we're going through special training with VRHP. We've engaged Dirk Johnson's private company to come out and work with us, or we're following these best practices that we've learned. And you want to let them know what you're doing. And then along the way, and then if you get direct questions from them, one of the things I liked what Dirk said was be empathetic to your employees. I think we need to be empathetic to our owners. If they're going to come and stay there, like, what's been going on? Who rented my place last? Were they from New York? Not to pick on New Yorkers. Or were they from Washington State, Dirk?
Right. Although be careful on which part of the
Miami,
state.
where I am. Like the opposite parts of the U.S. right now.
Right. Our physical distancing is as far as we could be, right? We've got one in Florida and one in Washington. Good job, Brad, on separating us so we could be
between Miami, Washington State, and New York City. They're going to be. I'm trying to make light for our talk, but it's a very serious situation. They may be asking, "Where's the last renter from?" Is it? What do they do for a living? Do they work in an industry that could be a hotspot? But I don't think they're going to go that far, but they are going to have those concerns. So empathy with the owners. And then that goes back to, I should add to what I said earlier about with the callers and the people that email you and the people that do in-app messaging through platforms like where it's more opaque. They think they're communicating with an owner. Hey, by the way, how's your housekeeping? Oh, we get this question a lot. I can understand your concern. It's okay to ask, and we have to show empathy for their concerns. You may have people that say, I'm thinking about coming, but I'm a little scared. I don't know. I know I feel the same way, but I can tell you what we're doing here to help make you feel safe. And here's how I feel good renting you these homes, because I know that we're doing the best that we can. And so empathy is huge, Dirk. I'm glad you brought it up for owners, whether you're talking with guests, owners, or employees.
Can I add one thing to you, Doug, if that's okay?
Sure.
And that would be, I guess it's not okay. I'm going to go anyway. So here we go. So it would be to use your phone to record a short video, interview your housekeeper, and just send out a weekly update, to keep your owners intact and to help them understand what you're learning and what you're doing.
Right.
This is a time to over communicate with employees, with guests, and with owners. This is not a time to let somebody else tell your story. This is a time for you to tell your story and to tell your ending. Because if you don't, someone else is going to tell with a different ending. And so this is a time for us to follow Doug's lead there of how am I going to articulate this and how am I going to communicate this? Because I want to over communicate. There's so much noise out there. We have to work super there. Then to hear us and to understand what we're saying takes a tremendous amount of effort on their part. And we have to make sure we are providing it in the right place at the right time to do that information, provide that information.
So when it comes to authenticity We talked about this yesterday, Doug. We typically have, and a lot of your recommendations would be really going down a path of some more routine behaviors and some more strategic responses to drive urgency. Talk about authenticity and how important it is in these situations with guests.
It's everything. You know, the reason I've been around doing since, you know, I started in my mid-20s, I'm in my 30th year of doing the training for reservations and hospitality is because the world really, you know, pre-COVID-19 was getting more and more a deeper understanding that authentic, genuine connections really meant something. And right now, that's the thing I'm most excited about, because I think when we emerge from this as a human race, we're going to realize what we all heard probably if you ever took a sociology class, that we're social creatures by nature. I don't know about you guys, but I'm missing hugs. You know, I live in Miami. Everybody kisses everybody. I'm missing all my VRMA friends. I wish this could be me right now. Hey, right? But so we're going to really want those genuine, authentic connections. Right. And that's what our training has been all about, which is, you know, it used to be reservation selling would be, oh, have you rented from us before? You haven't? Well, let me tell you about the property. It's 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It's oceanfront or lakefront or mountain view. It has a fully equipped kitchen and, you know, and listing. And then now what we want to do is say, hey, before I tell you about it, because you've already seen like 30 pictures online, right? What questions do you have? Right. What brings you in? You know, we train, the most important part of any KTN training is authenticity. Right? Now try that, guys. 1, 2, 3. I can hear you, Brett. You got to have a reaction. And so, you know, hey, what brings you in? Well, you know, we've been cooped up in this house, homeschooling, and I can imagine how you feel. My kids have graduated, or I have little ones too, or whatever I'm a grandma, whatever it is. You know, what brings you in? Oh, well, every year we take a cruise, or my husband and I were planning on going to Italy for our first trip. Oh my gosh. Wow. That must have been so. We have to have that authenticity. And then once you make that human connection, I mean, that is everything. Yep. You know, have you all had conversations like this? Has anyone, either of you, had a conversation with a stranger that touched your heart?
Absolutely.
In the last 6 weeks? I'll give you
the last 6 weeks?
Yeah, no, I mean, particularly in the last 6 weeks.
Let's see here. Yes, I have.
I'll tell you mine, and then maybe I'll hear yours. Our daughter was in finishing up Fordham in university, graduating senior, still graduating, but got pulled out. You know, brought home for spring break. Right. She has a cat, so I had to call, and she really was just going to come home for 3 days and go back. And this was mid-March. She lives in Bronx. Okay, mm-hmm. So a lot of uncertainty. So I get on the phone with a Delta agent. And I'm talking to her about, you know, my college daughter, and I share a little bit of this story because she just made me feel welcome, and about the cat and everything. And she's just like, well, you know, by the way, before I let you go, Mr. Kennedy, I hope your daughter makes it home safely. At that moment, in my heart, I felt a reaction. And, you know, I'm a 50-something-year-old guy, but I'm not ashamed to say a little moisture in the eyes. That's right. Authenticity. That is why I love Delta. You know, because of their people and the authenticity. So that's going to mean more. How many email blasts do you get like, oh, dear customer that, you know, did business with me 5 years ago in an obscure company. We just wanted to let you know everything we're doing for your benefit, right? Nobody cares about that. No. But the authentic, Dirk, the video, like, you know, it's going to be much better than sending out an email blast saying, we're working very hard in housekeeping to meet all standards. Send them a video with your housekeeper.
Right? Or even
authentic. That's what we want. And that's going to be more important than ever when society emerges from, you know, our cocoons of this pandemic.
Yeah.
Dirk, sure. What do you think? Did you want, we'll let Brett talk again in a minute.
Yeah, well, Brett's looking good there in his nice corner office there with all that sunlight coming through down there in Arizona. What can we say, right?
I know, he looks amazing. I don't know, I'm all pale and like
right.
starting to
We're all fair skinned on this panel.
Wow,
So
that's the way it goes.
what I wanted to ask, we have a client that told me he was doing a bunch of his maintenance requests or maintenance service through video. Have you had any feedback from people doing that to alleviate the need for someone to actually show up? They're showing the video under the sink. You're sitting there on Zoom, walking through it, and I've heard it's very successful. So is that something you've experienced?
Have I experienced? No. Encouraging? Absolutely. Because now we have to operate from the standpoint that, because we don't know that the people inside the home could be contagious with some sort of virus or even COVID-19. And so assuming that you have somebody, A, who's handy, and B, who is able to mechanically inclined to look under a sink and to do some of those things of that nature, totally. To be able to do that. So I'm an advocate for that, for sure. If we're able to facilitate, the tools, if they're handy in the property, if we're able to facilitate the proper terminology so we can discuss it, to work that. And if the guest is willing to take on that responsibility. Because some guests just aren't, because they're here to be on vacation. They want somebody else to take care of it. So again, coming back to Doug's point of how do I empathize? How am I authentic with this individual to break down some of those barriers and actually do that to keep my staff out of the house for some of this simple stuff. And that way I can address the big stuff on the turns or while they're out or something of that nature. But yeah, video help on that stuff is great.
And even
totally
if it's just guest, relations, their Wi-Fi is not working. How do I reset the router? I mean, even just something simple like that. The ability to get on video, I think right now is so people know how to do it and they're willing to, and some of that can alleviate needs to go to the property. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the big positive things of this situation is that people are now more comfortable doing a video call on their device or on their computer to facilitate some of this stuff. So now it opens this door. I for the longest time, I've always maintained that the housekeepers, maintenance techs are a remote workforce. And so just picking up the phone and talking to them doesn't work because I miss all the nonverbal cues. Now, granted, I can pick that up in some of the words, but if I'm able to sit here like this and do a video call with my housekeepers and maintenance techs to facilitate building rapport and answering their questions, and then do the same thing, with the maintenance tech has a question to the supervisor, or the housekeeper has a question to the supervisor, and then the same thing applies to the guests. And then the people on the call center side, whether they're calling into the reservation staff, I know that may bother Doug a little bit here, but if they're multi-call center staff of multiple calls coming in, then there has to be a good framework or a knowledge base for them to go through on how to fix a P-trap under a kitchen sink, how to break loose a garbage disposal with a wrench underneath. There has to be all those things so people on the other side of the phone can sound confident as they start to walk people through this.
I'm all for that. Yeah, in our Heart of Hospitality certification, which is the program we launched, 2 years ago now, we are all about, that's for the hospitality and guest services staff, where if you can help the guest fix the problem themselves, then there's no delay.
Right.
Better for everybody. So many, maintenance work orders are generated. Somebody drives all the way over to a home because the batteries in the remote or they're using the wrong remote.
Right. Yes.
Or the refrigerator isn't cooling. Well, they just put 2 cases of Budweiser in and it was in the 95-degree trunk.
Right.
So, I'm all for that. And to your point also, Dirk, we go to each other's presentations all the time. I've been advocating for video email welcome instead of texting. I've trained several companies on that, and we were just really getting started with one in particular that hopefully is still going to do it this fall. When you go to remote keyless entry and you just send them right to the home, you send a text, welcome to your home, that's about as exciting as getting a birthday text from your dentist, which is not very. So, but if you are the front desk reception and you say, hey, Dirk, it's Doug from the reception, just wanted to welcome you and your family, click. Hey, Brett, how are you doing? Welcome to you and your family, click.
And have confetti falling out of the sky around you as you're talking to them?
If you want to get fancy,
Totally.
but if not, just stand in front of your logo, right? And I get people that say, well, we don't have time for that. I'm like, wait a minute. 3 years ago, you spent 5 minutes checking everyone in at a desk. You know? So we really, this whole experience now, I mean, I tried to train people in the hotel sales how to do screen share meetings like Zoom GoToMeeting.
Mm-hmm.
And if they ever did it, they never wanted to be on webcam, right? But now guess what? Everybody's on webcam. They're doing like House Party and Blue Jean, and they're doing, Zoom happy hours. So hopefully communication is finally going to shift to video, which why hasn't it? It's 2020.
Right, exactly. And so this whole communication piece, and to me, this is where, again, as we talked about the terribleness of the disease and the impact, mentally, physically, and emotionally that is around us. And to me, yes, that is all true. And as we start to look at the changes that are happening in the workplace, to me, these are some of those positive things that are starting to happen. We were forced to embrace this technology and to use it. And I think that's a positive thing out of this is now the video calls and the video chats and the video messages and the ability for me to show my facial features and the excitement that you're checking in, or the sadness of that you have to depart early because of something that happened home. I mean, that authenticity that you talked about, Doug, now comes through not just in the voice, but in my facial features, which is, 90, 80, 88% or 89% of the nonverbal communication is my nonverbal stuff. I mean, so
I totally agree with you, Dirk, and I'm so excited to what you just said.
I'm so glad you are, because I could totally tell you were, Doug. Thank you.
Dirk, let's keep going through this list here. So the next item on the safe home is the products, cleaning agents, and equipment. I know that you sort of talked about equipment above that, but as far as the products and cleaning agents, do you have any recommendations on that, or any points that you want to touch on here?
Yeah, I do. Big one is logistics chains, supply chains. They are all messed up. And so the product you have today and that you're purchasing today may not be the product you have tomorrow. And so I'm advocating that you have a really, really good relationship with a janitorial supply company, whether that's a local or a remote company, doesn't matter to me. You need to make sure you have that relationship so they can tell you what's coming in on their truck, backing up to their dock, so they can make sure they can sell it to you and have your name on those products. I spoke to a large distributor here in Portland, and she was saying that even before the semi truck pulls up to the dock to unload, every product on that truck is sold. And so we want to make sure that we have access to the specific COVID-19 disinfectants that we need and the sanitizing agents that we need to ensure that we can provide the best property, and that we are showing we are doing our due diligence in making sure the property is disinfected and sanitized for those that are coming to stay with us. And that's just not for the guests and for the owners, but that's also for the staff. I mean, you think about now the office and the change and the huge shift in the office place now, being able to disinfect and sanitize those particular services. Doug, when I was in Gulf Shores, I used to run a call center, and my last person would go around when she left at midnight and spray everybody's workstations with Lysol during the cold and flu season to make sure everybody stayed healthy. Again, so what are we going to do now in this COVID era and this era of social distancing to make sure that we're safe? Because again, the thought was all the reservations would be tacked in as tight as they could be in that office space. And now we have to go away from that. So how am I going to do that? So this logistics and the supply chain is so critical from a guest and property standpoint, but also from an office standpoint, and having that relationship to ensure that I have my products in my warehouse when I need them for my staff to use them has to happen. And those relationships are only going to happen through people.
That's great advice.
Sorry, soapbox alert. I should have said that before I got on that. You asked a good topic, Brett. I'm so passionate about this topic of, we're Doug and I are talking about the connection with the guest and the owner, And yet the housekeeping department, maintenance department has all of these human connections from suppliers. Everything that we've talked about from a guest and owner standpoint between the property management company and them also applies to the company and the vendors that supply us with our products. You know, yes, we're paying our vendors a lot of money to pay us stuff, and we're paying them good money, but there's nothing wrong with, like Doug said, it's on their birthday. I pick up, I do a video call, and I send it to them and tell them thanks.
Yeah. We advocate all the time for, hospitality is not just for the guests, it's for each other, your coworkers and your vendors, because
everybody,
especially a lot of the vendors that serve multiple property management companies, relationships are everything. And if it comes down to it and it's the end of the shift and they're heading out, and you have that emergency, I mean, it's also the right thing to do when it comes to health. But
there is that, yeah.
But happiness and health, but really it's the right thing to do for humanity, but it's also a smart business decision.
Totally.
I wonder how many companies are actively engaging with their owners on video right now, just having those
I hope more
owner to owner or face-to-face owner conversations.
Well, go ahead, Doug. Please go ahead.
For 2 years, I've been advocating for the video email tool. Probably a lot of the people that watch this have been to my sessions at VRMA, have read my articles. I promise people, send me an email. I will send you a personal video email. I include a link that allows me to see if they actually sign up. There's very little adoption up until recently. I hope we get on this bandwagon, because I've been predicting for a long time it's the future, and I guess it really will be now that we've all been forced to adopt to this.
Right.
But what a great thing. Like, why have we not been using video instead of just generic sterile text? And it's ironic because when I train people on this, sometimes you would think, millennials, like all the stereotyping, which is really bad, because you can't stereotype a whole generation, any more than you could any millennials any more than boomers. But what is ironic is that the youngest people sometimes are the biggest resistors. And I'm like, why? Well, I don't want to be on video. I'm like, wait a minute. When you were born, did mom or dad stick a video camera, at the moment you emerged into the world, right? But,
the answer is yes, people. Hello.
They'll FaceTime their friends, but they didn't want to do a video to a guest or an owner. But now I think it's the new norm, and I hope, and that's actually if I may do a shameless plug, that's one of the webcam skills we're training right now, is how to hold professional meetings, which Brett is doing a great job here. Also how to sell through screen sharing, and then how to use the video email to follow up. So you can do like narrated screen shares. So you can show someone a house instead of just sending an email with a link and a price. You can do a narrated screen share. You can welcome messages we already talked about. I think the video, general video to the owners or specific video to the owners, like, hey, Dirk, I'm in your house right now. Look, we just want to show you the new cleaning products.
Totally.
So, Doug, would you recommend BombBomb for video?
I recommend BombBomb. There's only two. There's the other one, get the name. It's called CoVideo. Like COVID with an O.
I love it.
Was that prior
I love it.
God bless them. Now, I've never used that one. BombBomb has been around longer. They're both the same price. If anyone is interested, shoot me an email. I'll send you the link and some best practices. But it is a monthly subscription. But what's different about it is when you get the actual email, I don't want to pull one up. Maybe when you all start talking, I'll show one. But it actually drops the video message into the email.
Right.
So when a person gets it, it's not a link.
It just shows up.
It's actually the message with a big giant play button. And you can text the link, and you can also send the link through third-party booking apps. Okay.
Really?
And,
that's great.
Yeah. So your third-party booking platforms, you can actually send a link. Last time I tried, unless they shut it down. Okay. But some of the major ones, such as our major VRMA sponsors, the third-party booking platforms where you can't put an email in there, you can include a link to a video message. So this is why I'm excited about video email. There's no other way to send it unless you upload it to YouTube. I mean, a video message is too large of a file unless it's very, very short.
Right.
And low
And I mean,
resolution.
we are an industry based on experience, but we're also
Yeah.
an industry based on the human experience. And I
Right.
think that taking it out of electronic world and putting it into real life is a big deal on any front, whether it's housekeeping, maintenance, guests, owners, and anywhere. So
Yeah, and
definitely.
let me just speak to that a little bit more. If you're renting condos and your average stay is 3 nights and your rent is a couple $100, your total booking is under 1,000 and you have a lot of turn, it is harder to do a personalized message. However, you could do a video welcome message of the week. Welcome to our guests visiting our town for the week of blah, blah, blah. I've got Dirk over here in charge of housekeeping. Hi, I'm Dirk. Our team stands ready. I got Brett over here. His team's in charge of maintenance. And we're here in the office if you need anything. By the way, there's a marathon this week or whatever. And so, but larger homes, high rents, it takes so little time to send a personalized welcome message or a personalized departure message or both, or a follow-up to a conversation that you had on the phone from somebody who's booking a $10,000 weekly rental that's not ready to commit, and you send them either a video email or a narrated screen share, which you can do with these same tools. It's a little tricky, which is why, fortunately for us, we're able to sell training on how to do this, which we can do remotely or on site. But you can get in the game. You can get in the game on your own.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dirk, just because we're almost coming up on that hour mark, I'm shocked. It's actually been going pretty fast. But as far as the cleaning and inspections, you made some interesting comments the other day. What would you recommend as far as the bullet points on cleaning and inspections? I know that, to remind you, it was about the cleaning time, being able to adjust basically your checkouts and your check-in cleanings and all of that.
Yeah, so a lot of companies are having an earlier departure. If they departed at 10, they would depart now at 9, and then check-in instead of being at 4 is now at 5. So there's a longer 2-hour window for the cleaning staff to get in and do their work. Because if you think about the number of high-touch surfaces now that a cleaner has to address, from all the light plates, the light switches, the face plates, the extra time spent on the remote controls, all of these things add up to time, because we have to think of, we have a regular departure clean pre-COVID, and now we have a departure clean standard post-COVID. And so I need to reach out into my deep clean standard and pull some of those things into my departure clean. So that means I'm going to have a longer clean time. So that means the staff, if they're paid by the property, have to be compensated for that extra time. And so I need to make sure that I'm able to have the time and the correct number of staff to facilitate this new cleaning standard that has to be addressed. For some cases, I know of some companies who have a housekeeper walk in with mask and gloves to open up all the windows, get some cross ventilation. They stand outside for 15 minutes, and then they go inside and start to clean. So again, you have to look at your specific business needs and your specific business circumstances to decide what's best for you and how you're going to protect your staff and how you're going to ensure that this clean happens in this time frame. Because the last thing we want to do is for our reservations team to stand behind their cleaning staff, and then the cleaning staff go in and do a super rush job, and now there's some cleaning issues. We want to make sure that we are able to allocate from a human resource the people and the time frame and the products and the tools, microfiber rags, doodle bugs, pressurized sprayers, all of those things to ensure that the housekeepers can accomplish the cleaning tasks that they've been set to do.
When it comes to soft surfaces and upholstery, did you have anything to add on to that as far as the pressurized pump sprayer we're talking about here? I'm seeing on your site.
Yeah, so we have the pressurized pump sprayer here where I can pump it up, and then I push this button right here and out it sprays. And so and this is why it's really good to know your local, your product rep, because some of the disinfectants that you can use on the hard surface can also act as a sanitizer on the soft surfaces. I'm still searching for an article that talks about how long COVID lives on those soft surfaces. Once I do, I will broadcast that information as loudly and as far as I can. Until then, though, I have to make sure that, if I can use a disinfecting product on the soft goods, that's great. That's one less product to use, or I just get a good sanitizing agent to use on those soft goods. And I want to limit the number of those soft goods. So if there's a lot of throw pillows, put them in a closet, get rid of them. Bedspreads, put them in a closet and lock them up. Otherwise, you have to launder the bedspreads on every turn, and most people don't have the machine capacity or the inventory to be able to turn those bedspreads. There are so many other things they could be doing to project trust and confidence that this property has been disinfected and sanitized and is ready for the guests to come in and stay.
That's a great takeaway, I would say. So I know that a lot of people are going to be trying to make reservations. They're going to be trying to make guests feel comfortable coming there. I think a huge part of that is cancellation policies and making sure that you have the ability to confidently say, hey, if you can't come, you're going to be able to get your money back, and at least a certain portion of your money back. And I think that's a big deal. I've been name dropping this a lot recently with the Rental Guardians Master Cancel program, and it's moving forward. If this thing reflares up and people have to cancel, you want to protect your revenue. So if you get a chance to look at the Master Cancel program, it's really a good program to protect your revenue. And I think it's also a good selling point for closing the deals on these reservations. So Doug, when it comes to the challenges of calls coming in, deal seekers, differences in creating urgency, how do you recommend people address this changing environment?
Coming up on the end here, I'll give you my 3 simple tips from the training that we've had a lot of this in all of our training, but we're packaging it now in this webcam, live private webcam. It's called, getting ready for the deal seeking daydreamers. Number 1 is frame your rates as being already discounted. So if you're going to quote a rate, you want to, if you know the actual, depending on your property management system, if it shows the actual rate at a glance, and you can see, oh, this rate during peak season would normally be 1,000, but for your dates it's 800, or 10,000 and 8,000. We have a lot of range in vacation rental.
For sure.
Actually reference the number if possible. If you can't, at least act surprised, like checking availability. Oh, wow, I can't believe this rate. This is a really good deal. Okay, so it takes a little bit of acting in that scenario. Frame the rates as being already discounted, or wow, these are some really excellent rates that we're offering. That instead of saying the rate's 800, oh great, well how about 6? They're going to negotiate down unless you frame it. Number 2, create urgency. The tough part in vacation rental is they can actually search dates and see how many properties come up. In a hotel, it just shows you what room types are available on their website, but here it actually lists the properties. They're going to know that it's a buyer's market, at least for now. Now, hopefully by we get into June and things calm down in the world, there will actually be less demand. But for right now, we're pretty open. So the caller may say, yeah, by the way, I see you have plenty of availability. Or that you might say, oh, may I secure that home for you now? And they're going to say, well, I see you have a lot of homes online, so I'm going to wait. That's where they have to say, well, or someone might say, how's your availability, right? And you don't want to say, oh, we're almost sold out, and they know you have 10 3-bedrooms. So we want to train them to say, well, actually right now we are showing availability, but I'll tell you what, we're getting a lot more calls. Or wow, calls have really picked up today. Now, even if you're dead slow, you're not lying, right? Because yesterday you got no calls, and today someone called you.
You always want to tell the truth.
Sir, I've had 100% increase in calls today because you called. Right? Third point is then lead right into, tell you what though, why don't you let me, I'm going to lock this in for you now. How's that sound? Because we've actually made more flexible deposit cancellations, and which most companies have. Or if you're getting closer and you don't want to hold it, and they're calling, and they're calling for July 4th. Hopefully July 4th is still a date that's pretty booked up. You can say, well, tell you what, we have, Rental Guardian. And again, I don't like to be biased towards any vendors. I don't know, there may be other VRMA members who sell. But we have an option that you can book it with this extra fee for the insurance, and this would cover it given this circumstance.
Right.
Or whatever your specific policy is relative to being more flexible. So I'll leave the actual wording up to the company to recommend, but they've got to practice this with their staff. They've got to train them on it. Be glad to help on that. They got to monitor their use of doing that, which we do through mystery shopping or scoring your calls through various CRMs. And then you have to give them, help them actually practice it, because it's going to be an art. There's going to be an art to selling it. And I think voice channel is going to be back with a vengeance. People are going to call with questions relative to the cleaning, relative to what's open, and relative to what is your deal.
Yeah.
What's your best deal?
So Dirk, just to try to get through these other bullet points on the recommendations or guidelines, linens and bedding. Talk to us about that. Been doing that a lot lately.
Well, this is the opportunity for us to get rid of the bedspreads, especially the ones from 1960, right? Now is the time to get rid of those. And so again, we want to evoke trust. We want to invoke that the property is clean and ready for them. So bedspreads are out, just like throw pillows. And so if you have the opportunity and the means to do so, from my perspective, the best solution is something called a sheet duvet. And that is where there's a fitted sheet to cover the mattress, and then you go with it's like a duvet, but there's no flat sheet, and the blanket goes inside. And so on a turn, then the cleaner comes in, pulls the fitted sheet, pulls the blanket out of the sheet duvet, they put the new fitted sheet on, and they put the blanket back in the sheet duvet, and then they make the bed. Now, if you want some color, then you could certainly put a bed scarf across the bottom. Your sheet duvets can be tone on tone, satin stripe, could be crinkle. There's any number of things you can do rather than just stark plain white. And so to me, that is the best solution. And then you take the comforter and either you have the owner come get it, or you find an extra big closet that you can put a nice padlock on or locking mechanism and put all of it in there. But I'm not a fan of you pulling all those items out and storing it in your warehouse. It's a great risk to lose something and then you have to replace it. Leave it in the property or have the owner come get it and operate from that way. And then, you want to be washing it in a commercial facility, whether that's a third party that you're contracting with somebody, or you have commercial machines in a laundry facility for you. Then you want to make sure that you're able to wash it with the correct time, temperature, mechanical action, and chemistry to make sure you get all the stains off and make sure that you get all the viruses and bugs out of the linen, because people just know that those bedspreads are not as clean as they ought to be, and they're not laundered as often as they ought to be. This is the time where we have the leverage to come in and to make this adjustment. This is a huge adjustment from an owner's perspective, because for some reason they really love their bedspreads. From an operational and from a cleanliness standpoint, to me, this is something we have to do. Now, if you can't do that, then pulling the bedspreads, locking it up, and then just working with a fitted sheet, flat sheet, and a blanket. Again, I'm assuming that your blankets are nice looking. And then you're able to just launder those and take care of those. Now, it's important, again, to go back to our definition of sanitization and disinfection. When I'm taking it out of the washing machine and putting it in the dryer, and it comes out of the dryer with the nice hot heat, there are no bugs on it. But when I pull it out and I start to fold it, that's why the laundry staff need to be wearing some masks and doing some things of that nature to make sure that they're able to protect that sheet, because once it comes out into the air, viruses and stuff are in the air. So now it's a sanitized product, not a disinfected product. And so then I can fold it up, do what I need to do, and then get it to the properties to address. To me, that's the ideal scenario. The sheet duvets is just the best way to go. That's the ideal scenario. Obviously, there are other solutions, but those are the two that I'll address at this moment.
Trash removal.
Yes, trash happens.
Give us some feedback on that.
So you want to be real careful with trash. You want to make sure that the trash, your staff that's working, so the housekeeper is going to gather it up. We want to make sure that they're wearing the correct PPE, the personal protective equipment with gloves, and that if the trash is overfull, that they've got the good, strong, contractor bag, so to speak, that they can put it in. So if a maintenance tech or somebody else comes along to pick up the trash, that it can handle and not be punctured. And when someone's picking up, we want to make sure that they hold it away from themselves so they don't get cut by some broken glass that may be inside or sharp metal that may inadvertently poke through and then poke them. So we want to make sure that we're really careful about how we work with that. And then, trash cans are once a week or twice a week. And, when everybody comes to stay, the amount of cardboard and packaging for the food is just astronomical. And so we want to make sure that we are able to address those items in a specific way that's safe as we start to pick those up and take care of those.
Maintenance.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about maintenance. We've got the video calls that Doug was so good about talking about and working through with that. I know some people are going to, defer some of that light maintenance stuff until after the guests have departed. Again, that's a business decision you're going to have to make. If the guests can fix it themselves, that's what they should do. And then again, if it does require somebody to come into the property from a housekeeping or a maintenance standpoint, then what is the company's protocol on how they're going to protect the guest and protect the owner? I love Doug's comment earlier about showmanship. There has to be some showmanship and some training on this when we show up at the property to engage with the guest. We can certainly, there's no reason why we couldn't get a mask with the company logo on it, or even have a picture of Brett on it as I'm walking in, to do some things that way.
Do that.
There's all sorts of things we could do to add some humor. The South is very fond of the football, so even if you don't like the team that the guest is cheering for, you could certainly wear that mask just to break down those barriers. There's any number of things that can be done. And then where do the guests go while the maintenance guy is doing their thing? All these things have to be thought about and worked through. And again, talk to your staff, talk to them and how we're going to do this. Now, I will say this on a very soapboxic stance. We must, and I underscore bold, must be speaking with our local health officials. They are our lifeline. We need to be communicating with them at least once a week. What's new? What's taking place? Because they are the giver and provider of information in regards to this. What they recommend is what we should be doing. We should be making every effort to have them as our best friend. We should be talking to them. We should be sending them candy bars. We should be doing any number of things as grateful and gratitude and gratefulness and gratitude towards them in providing us the information, because they really will help us know and understand how to take care of our staff, how to take care of our guests, and what's happening in the area and what we can do to address that.
Excellent feedback. Owner and guest policies. This is the final bullet point, aside from telling your story on the recommendations.
So we've already Doug's done some really good work through that as far as talking in the video calls and so forth. We've talked about that through check-in and check-out times. We've talked about, what's the policy if a guest has to, if a maintenance or housekeeper has to go into a property to work with that. Whether that's the mask, the splash goggles, all those things that start to play into that. Again, it comes back to the communication piece. If the maintenance tech is arriving or the housekeeper is arriving, they should totally be doing a video call. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Guest, this is Dirk Johnson from such and such from the Parry Property Management Company. I'm coming in to address the toilet. I'm about to knock on the door. Can someone just unlock it and then, step 5 feet back so I can open the door, introduce myself, all these things start to play into that. Again, the technology is our friend. We shouldn't be afraid of it. This is our time to embrace it and to use it. Now again, there's always the concern, well, if I call them from my device, then they're going to have my cell number. Well, then we should have a company cell phone number that changes, or we should be using some sort of software that guards that private information, so I'm now not getting calls in the middle of the night, and then I can go in and do my work from that standpoint. But again, all of us operate differently. We think differently. I defer back to Doug from a guest-centric and guest and an owner standpoint, because we have to make sure that we are presenting our best selves. And that comes from a showmanship piece, that comes from training, that comes from practice, the dreaded role-playing. We have to practice it. Otherwise, we're not going to get it right. We have to practice it in a safe environment. Go ahead, Doug. Say it, please.
Role-playing can be fun if you do it with KTN.
Totally, right? Totally.
That's the magic of training. Nobody wants to do it, but they all smile at the end.
Well, and that's totally the point. We have to practice this. A cleaner who is part of the reason they may want to be a cleaner is they just want to work alone.
Right.
And so now they're thrust into this limelight because that's what cleaning is now. It used to be location, 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 as an article I read yesterday said. Now it's clean, clean, clean.
Yeah.
We are in the limelight. We are the carriers of the brand and always have been. We loved housekeeping before housekeeping was sexy as it is today. And so we want to make sure that we teach and train our people how to do guest service. And
That's
whether you do that through
We've
KTM.
been, the hospitality training that we do for vacation rental is more and more about housekeeping and maintenance because they are the ones who actually see the guests now with more and more remote and keyless entry. And also they see them perhaps at the worst times. Well, you know, with maintenance going.
Well, right, because I've got this on and I've got toilet juice dripping down my hand and you want to shake it? Really? Anyway, because the guest doesn't see it. Yeah. They just don't see it. They're excited to be wherever. I'm ready to move in. And why are you still here? Well, that's because I still got to clean. So we have to practice this to build that confidence.
I think as we move forward and come out of these unknowns that are about to come, it's going to be more and more important that voices like yours are heard. So we're really happy to have you on and trying to spread the good word throughout the industry. The whole point of this show is to come out of this thing stronger. And if we can get better at our cleaning, we can get better at our maintenance, our communication, our reservation practices, that's all right in your area of expertise. And I wanted to thank both of you for joining us and being wonderful guests. And for those folks who joined the call, good luck with everything that's going on within the industry. And hopefully, I always cross my fingers that vacation rentals can be opened. If hotels are open, it makes no sense that people should be in hotels and not vacation rentals. So I just want to continue to throw out my frustration about that because it just doesn't make sense. And I think it's an assault on our industry. So anyways, folks like you can help us achieve that. So let's all work together.
Sure.
Once again, thanks everybody. Thank you, Doug and Dirk. Did you have any final thoughts?
Stay clean, stay healthy. We're all in this together, and love your housekeepers. They need it. They're carrying the brand, and some of them are very scared about this COVID, fearful, and some are afraid to come back to work. And we just need to virtually put our arm around them, listen to them, and talk to them. And some of the guests are scared too. So, following Doug's lead with his training and all those things that start to play into that, we just have to be really good listeners and be authentic and empathize with the people that they're going through, because we can all empathize with something that somebody's feeling on the other side.
Well, I'll just add, thank you, Dr. Dirk Fauci. The industry needs you. It's amazing. Your work has always been important, but especially now. Thanks for having us, getting this message out to the industry we all love so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Take care.